Hey, thanks for joining the Snelling Forging the Future podcast. My name is Bennett. I'm your host, and I'm talking with Jessica West. She's the head of people at SensorUp, and I'm super excited to hear about her leadership philosophies and how she's built such a great team. So, Jessica, thanks for joining the call today.
Yeah, thanks, Bennett. I'm excited to be here.
Well, before we jump in, could you tell people a little bit about what SensorUp is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So SensorUp started in the University of Calgary with our founder, Steve Liang, who is a professor there. And he kind of started us as all things sensors. So we would take any information from any sensor there was and make sense of it.
Right.
And so prior to my joining, we would do things like smart cities and all kinds of things that you can get a sensor from and then use that to make information or gather data or organize data. And since my joining, just right before my joining, we kind of transitioned into the oil and gas industry, not as oil and gas experts per se, but more as methane management experts. So we help
Right.
oil and gas companies kind of manage their methane emissions, and we're trying to kind of branch out and see how we can help continue this climate tech and clean tech push to help the world become a better place.
Amazing. Yeah, that sounds like fantastic work. Definitely something that's very needed right now. You started your career in hospitality in Santa Fe, if I understand correctly, and you spent 6 years working at a ski basin, and now you're the head of people at a large tech company. What has that journey been like for you?
Yeah, it's been exciting and fun, and I love challenges. So that's probably kind of why I fell into this. When I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, working in restaurants, and went to UNM in Albuquerque, continued
Hmm.
working in restaurants, got my degree in business because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to major in. So I was like, oh, business kind of applies to everything. My husband and I had this idea that we wanted to own a restaurant until we worked in them for so long and decided that that was not our path. And then we moved back to our hometown. We had two daughters. And I kind of did what I called were our perk jobs. So it was sort of
Hmm.
restaurants, the ski basin. I worked at a Japanese health spa in Santa Fe, and so my kids thought that we lived there, and they got hot tubs all the time. And then one day, when a friend of mine who I've worked with in the past and have known since high school reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to join a tech startup in Santa Fe, New Mexico, as a recruiting coordinator, and I jumped on that really quick and I was accepted for the role, and basically the rest is history. So I I've kind of moved through all of the people side of the organization. My hospitality industry really led well to my recruiting side of our tech company. At the time, it was pre-COVID, so we were having on-site interviews and arranging all of that. So it was really nice to be able to invite people to Santa Fe, which is my hometown, and show them around. And
Yeah.
then the pandemic hit.
Right.
Yeah. So once the pandemic came, we all went remote, and we got a new head of people at my former company. And she was like, do you want to be on people operations? And I said, sure. So
Yeah.
she had been training me. To this day, she's still my mentor.
Oh,
And then when she left the company, they asked me to step into the role of head of people. And then our former CEO reached out to me and said, oh, I'm at this really cool new company.
mm,
Would you like to come and be our head of people? And I jumped on that opportunity because we are a Canadian-based company, SensorUp is.
right.
So so I jumped on that opportunity, got to learn a lot about Canadian employment and everything that's going on there. So I guess I'm just sort of a sponge of information, except I like to absorb and not necessarily squeeze it out so much and lose it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's fantastic, Jessica. Thanks for going through that in a little bit of detail. Okay, so Jessica, you've had a big hand in shaping the U.S. side of the business, is my understanding. You've been setting up talent acquisition, performance reviews, benefits. What accomplishment are you most proud of so far?
I would say kind of the entirety of it. So, like, I think word of mouth and networking is one of your biggest strengths. Um,
Mm,
so, so having known people that I've worked with in the past, and present have really helped me set up a lot of the US base. And then being able to have some people, as I had mentioned, my mentor lives in Canada. So
right,
being able to kind of use her as a sounding board when I'm unsure of things has been really helpful. And I guess, I guess the biggest accomplishment that I would feel about, I don't know if it's just setting up the US per se, would be continuing to bring these amazing, smart people together into our team and, really make a great company and try and then foster all of those connections and relationships and
right.
the sort of strive to be part of this company that wants to do better for the world. So,
Mm. Yeah, that's fantastic. It must be pretty validating and powerful work to be helping to reduce emissions and things like that. I know that's very important to a lot of people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I understand you've also worked outside of HR. You've helped with business development, company goals. You mentioned AI implementation. What's it like wearing so many hats in this environment?
Yeah, I guess when you're in a startup environment, you tend to wear many hats. So my CEO and I were talking one day and he goes, "How did you end up doing this?" And I said, "Well, I brought it up." And he goes, "Oh, that's what happens in a startup. If you mention it, you own it almost." And so then we did some
Right.
transitioning to like get the correct owner to come in. But I mean, I'm happy. I love learning everything I can about the place that I work and the things that we do. So I'm wearing all of those hats. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, but with the addition of AI, you can take a lot of that administrative burden away and
Right.
contribute to meaningful things within the company. So that's what I'm working on currently.
I feel like that's similar with smaller organizations like ours over at Snelling, where, like you said, if you mention something, well, go ahead, take it on. It's you or one of the other 3 people here, so I think that can be a really great way to run an organization, though. Okay, I remember you mentioning that your goal in business and maybe in life as well is to be very employee and people-centric. What does that look like in practice, especially in a remote-first company?
Yeah, that's a big one to unpack. So I think I'll start with something that my Canadian mentor told me when she brought me into people operations, and she said, if you're going above and beyond, then all of the other stuff sort of falls into place. So you don't have to necessarily, and not that it's not important, but you don't have to necessarily rely on all your compliance and your policies because you're already doing more than that. And so in a remote world, it gets a little more difficult to keep the engagement going because everyone is dispersed throughout Canada and the US. And
Right.
so we often try to do a lead camp with the senior management where we get together and sort of discuss what our goals and initiatives are. And we just had one last week, and it was really amazing to come in this week to join some meetings and see how the engagement lifted from just having people
Right.
connecting. And that's another conversation that I had with our CEO while we were there. And I said, it's awesome that we're doing all of this great work, but I'm also like, the benefit isn't just doing the work, it's us all being in a room together and having that connection. And then in a world where in remote first, it's a lot harder for that organic connection to happen.
Right.
And even when it's sort of organic, it's really not organic because you're still scheduling a meeting on somebody's calendar. And so we try and find ways to bring people together so that they can get and I'm a little bit of a, I don't know, I wouldn't say I'm a bad person for doing this, but I'll like schedule game days during work hours so people can, work or but we're actually playing a game and connecting. And we
Well,
played
that's cool.
yeah, we did Hexanaut IO recently that a colleague of ours said was like really addicting. So a group of us played, and you had to be on a team, and it's kind of like snakes. So you have to take up a bunch of space.
Yes.
And it turned into this team building for us where we were like telling each other to get this side of the map or like back us up while we were going over here, and it was really fun. And I think when you start learning about people more than just their work, that's when kind of that connection comes into play. So I try and sprinkle things in like that, especially when you can do sort of smaller groups that aren't within the same departments of a company, because then you get
Sure.
all this cross connection.
Yeah, that sounds super valuable. I'm putting it on the record that you said that we should be gaming to do team building. I
Yeah.
remember the IO. There were a couple games when I was in high
Yeah.
school that I rode around. I'll have to check that on. You said Hexagon?
Hexanaut. So it's
Okay.
HEXANAUT.io.
Next happy hour, me and my team, we're gonna be playing that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so it's always trying to find those little things that you can like sprinkle in there where it's some fun and some team building, which still like contributes to the work at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, things like that are very important. They're an investment in people's mental health and subduing any burnout that might be accumulating. I think that makes a lot of sense. And that's a fun way to do
Yeah.
that. Okay. Well, Jessica, you've also mentioned when we've talked before that strong leaders sometimes bring differing philosophies. How do you help keep communication open and get everyone on the same page with different leadership styles?
Yeah, something that we've been discussing recently, because I think, again, in a remote world, calendars fill up, and then you might have
Yeah.
redundant calls or like whatever else is going on, and some information that's in a one-on-one, a smaller group, may not be shared with some vital stakeholders that need that information as well. And so we've been talking about like genius clusters, reducing the amount of one-on-ones so that all these people are in the same room sharing the information, and we can swap that information out like week after week, and whoever's facilitating it, and it can just be like an umbrella of something that we need to discuss and share. So that's kind of one move that we're going in. Another one is just, I guess, sort of constant coaching in a way. So it's like sharing, continuing to reiterate that, we're bringing in the right stakeholders or the right key players that need to be part of these conversations. So it doesn't happen at the end when they're like, wait, so all of this is decided, but I'm the owner of it. Something like that. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a struggle. And it's not something that will go away very easily. Everyone is kind of who they are. And so it's like learning how to communicate and connect with them at their level. And I think a lot of it is just holding a lot of empathy, understanding the people that you're talking to. They're just like, when you're in a meeting, it might be just a work call, but they might have a million other things going on outside. So of that. So just, trying to hold that empathy and understanding and help foster the company and engagement you want to see. Be the change you
Definitely.
want to see in the world.
Now that's catchy. I think someone should put that on a shirt. No, I'm just kidding. I think I've heard that one. No, that's great. I think leading with empathy is always very valuable in the workplace and outside of it. But it sounds like you're doing a great job there. I know you mentioned that you do rely on some trusted recruiting partners, Jessica. What do you look for in those relationships, and how do they help you find the right long-term people for your team?
Yeah. So I have a couple people that I've worked with in the past, and to this day have been just the best. Like they spoiled me in terms of understanding what recruiting is. So
Yeah.
they're very, especially the one that I work with. Her name is Jamie, and she and I have known each other since high school, and we've been great friends. And she and I just can connect really well, I guess. Like our information and what we're doing, we're always kind of not necessarily a hive mind, but we're always working together to make things more efficient, more effective, make better processes on how we bring in new employees. My motto kind of for the recruiting process is, you want to hire that person that is going to stay with you and bring value. And hopefully also bring value to the person that you hire. So I always like, we have a not an extensive process, but a pretty deep process where there's a lot of preparation work before going into sourcing and interviewing. So we know exactly who that person is looking for, the hiring manager is looking for.
Mm.
And then we start the interview process. We bring everyone together at the end, have a round table. And so everyone has a seat at the table to be able to like make the choices about who we bring into the company instead of it just being like, oh, I want this person, or having like a job description and then somebody with a job title matches that. And they go really deep in their sourcing too. So, and in their communication or in her communication with the hiring managers, she digs deep to find this exact idea of what they're looking for so that she can go and try and match that to a person. But we all can't get our unicorns,
Yeah, we tout that joke all the time. You can have the
right?
horn or the color or the wings, but you can't have all three, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. But and like in recruiting, you just know that where like there's this, you get a headache off the record. You just get a headache where you're like, you are looking for someone who doesn't exist. So
Yeah, right. Yeah.
do they check all of these boxes and these can be trained? Perfect. This is
Yeah.
probably the corn in waiting.
Right. Yeah, and another one we use to motivate is just saying like, how much is this costing you to have this position open for so long while you're looking
Yeah.
for this one particular thing? They got to be a good golfer or something.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or do you want to have a beer with them? Like, if you learn
Yeah,
about them after the fact, then you might want to have a bear with them. But can they do the job that you're asking them to do?
right. Makes sense. And yeah, what you were saying makes a lot of sense. I love those long-term relationships that can be built in business where you really get to know somebody, you get to know how they work and how you can best approach different projects and things like that. That sounds really like you have a great support system there. Jessica, what is the biggest challenge that you're excited to tackle next at SensorUp?
I'd say I gosh, I started with SensorUp 2 years ago last week. And
Wow.
and there was no HR prior to my arrival, so there's been a lot like I feel like my biggest challenge when I started was helping this awesome company turn into, and of course I can't do this alone, but helping this awesome company turn into this really good business that can
Right.
thrive and survive and thrive and grow. And I guess just sort of creating more processes to help us work easier. My main goal is to start incorporating a lot of this new AI, generative AI, and AI agents into the admin work that we all do. So, like for benefits or payroll or anything like that that needs to be done like manually,
Hmm.
start performance management, because nobody wants to make goals, nobody wants to take the time to do a performance review. Performance reviews tend to be scary, so I want it to be more based on a holistic idea of this person rather than just one or two things they did right or one or two things they did wrong, and then help them grow into what they are trying to get to. Career wise, new technology development wise, anything like that, whatever I can make easier through this AI push is my next challenge. So huge. And I was talking to my mentor about this, and I was like, okay, I'm creating this people strategy for the next 6 months. And here are some ideas that I'm coming out with. And she was like, this is what I would advise or like suggest you do. Do it for 2 years. Say, this is what I want to happen in 2 years. Make those initiatives and then break them down into smaller deliverables over the next 6 months and then the next 6 months. And I was like, that my head can wrap around.
Yes.
But when I'm like 2 years away, I have to get all of this done, like, not creating a timeline or something like that. So that was like very helpful to bring my ADHD brain back to earth and start compartmentalizing things instead of making it one big daunting task.
I totally relate to that. I have a little bit of that ADHD they're always talking about. I think my trouble comes with like compartmentalizing a little too much sometimes, where I'm like, Well, if I take step 1A dash 35, then I will be one step closer today to my long-term goal. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, Jessica, that all sounds fantastic. I appreciate you going through that last question. Well, I really appreciated you joining the podcast today.